I'm Martin Lehfeldt. I'm from Atlanta, and we actually think that Joe's a Southerner. My 12-year friendship with Joe began with a shared interest in promoting the creation of more philanthropy in our region, and especially thoughtful philanthropy. And it became even closer and ever closer as we discovered other common passions and pet peeves. When Dylan Thomas's father died, the son wrote, "Do not go gentle into that dark night, rage against the dying of light." But Joe did go gentle and quietly, with enormous dignity, grace, and class. He was an incredibly kind and even sentimental man. His pugnaciousness, his wrath, and his contempt were not directed against the dying of the light. They didn't have to be. He had already put them to excellent use, far better use, in his battles against injustice and unfairness. And as we all know, he reserved some of his choicest venom for the rich and powerful who refused to take responsibility for the rest of God's creation and God's people. Have you ever met anyone who radiated so much energy? Ideas, opinions, commentary, dreams, and visions raced from Joe's fertile brain to his lips, to his listeners' ears, in many genres: bombast, lyrical tirades, uproarious stories, and that superheated rhetoric virtually compelled you to join him in his obvious appreciation of whatever he was talking about. And yet he could listen thoughtfully and intently and encouragingly to elicit the best ideas of his family and friends and colleagues and clients, and not just listen to them, but also applaud them and share them with others, as proud of those ideas as if they were his own. Joe could be richly sardonic and sometimes even cynical, and yet he was first and foremost a deeply reflective and spiritual person who read philosophy and revered the writings of Reinhold Niebuhr. Who else would have used a trip to Kentucky for a Berea College board meeting to make a private pilgrimage to the gravesite of Thomas Merton? Joe could be impatient and hypercritical. He knew that life was too important and too short to be wasted on petty stupidity and overdramatic concerns about one's own problems. And so woe to anyone whom he found worrying about the correct placement of a comma when presented with the articulation of a beautiful vision, or preferring to play it safe and to think bureaucratically when offered the chance to take a beautiful risk. It's very difficult to stop talking about this richly complex and witty and subtle man, this wine connoisseur who also could enjoy sitting at a working man's bar and knocking back a couple of brews, this incredible visionary who simply didn't know how to have small dreams, a man who could be diplomatic but seldom chose to be, this loyal cheerleader of his family members and colleagues and friends, this lover of life in all of its many forms. However, I do know, and it might have been Joe who reminded me, that in order for a speech to be eternal, it doesn't have to be everlasting, so I will try to wind down these remarks. This kind of service is about memories, and here's one that I will treasure forever. Joe loved good poetry, and he appreciated an elegant turn of phrase. However, as I told him a few weeks ago, the greatest tribute I could pay him is one that I will now share with you. And I've got to qualify it, because I'm doing this with some nervousness. I'm reminded that we are in a cherished shrine of free speech. I'm reminded that Joe would have enjoyed this story. I'm going to apologize in advance to those who are going to take offense. And parents, you may want to cover your children's ears. But here it is, and it was the tribute. No one I have ever known could sprinkle his conversation, his eyes twinkling all the while, with that wonderfully emphatic, expressive, centuries-old, all-purpose Anglo-Saxon word fuck, with the same elan, the same dash, the same relish, and the same joyful abandon that Joe Breitniker did. I bet this is a first for Old South. In a world of polite and ambiguous speech that often masks honest expression, Joe's candor was, shall we say, refreshing. He and I said our final goodbyes via email. He told me that the oncological endgame, as he put it, was near. And then he wrote, "Please take care of all the things we worry about together." The final sentence with which he concluded was, "Oh, and give them hell for me." So what I have to say next and finally is basically for Joe. All of us who love Joe can't get away with that sweet, simple emotion. Because we loved him, we have inherited a responsibility. And shame on all of us if we don't accept it. Here it is, and I'm echoing Tom. This very evening, before this service concludes, take a solemn oath that you will continue the fight for all that is good and noble, that you won't be suckered by the distortions of power-hungry politicians who cynically seek to manipulate us, or the arrogance of corporations who see the world as their private preserve to plunder and rape, or the play-it-safe philanthropists who have forgotten the meaning of the true public good, or the dogma of any institution that exists only to perpetuate itself, or the evil of hubris wherever it shows its ugly head. Vow this evening that you will keep before you the vision of Dr. King's beloved community, and that you, like Joe, will voice your outrage when anyone disrupts our progress toward that community. Dylan Thomas wrote another poem about death, and it begins, "And death shall have no dominion." And if we will continue to fight that good fight, then Joe's death will indeed establish no dominion. Thank you.